Have any revised thoughts about the Pac-12 race now that we've seen Oregon go to UCLA, get down by 14, take a big lead by 17, almost blow it? Unfortunately, what I would have liked to have seen in that game is obviously Dorian Thompson-Robinson finish out that closing drive, stay on the field, because he was really smoking it down the field. He had 2 fourth down conversions to see what would have happened there, but really good game at the Rose Bowl, and Oregon survives again. And then the score that you mentioned with Oregon State putting it on Utah down by 10, I believe, at half, and really turning it on in the second half. How is your view currently on the Pac-12 race?
Yeah, so I mean, this all runs through the state of Oregon, and on a number of levels. And when I say that, I mean not just that Oregon and Oregon State look like the two best teams in the Pac-12 North, but also because Arizona State has to play Oregon State, and Oregon and Utah play. So how Utah and Arizona State handle the Oregon schools in upcoming November games, that's going to decide the Pac-12 South. I mean, you have UCLA at Utah this week, and Utah, should win that game at home at night, and get the inside track in the South. But then Utah still has to handle Oregon to hold off Arizona State in a two-way race. So let's say Utah loses to Oregon, so that puts Arizona State back in the mix in the Pac-12 South. So we go back to that November 20 game in Corvallis. That could wind up being the game that determines the Pac-12 championship game matchup, at least in the South, maybe in both. It's kind of crazy, but it's certainly possible. And the backgrounder here, Mark, is that Arizona State going to the Pacific Northwest in November when it's soggy and misty and miserable. Arizona State has usually not handled those situations very well. It's a bad break from the Pac-12 schedule maker. Arizona State would love to go to Corvallis in late September, very early October, when it's much warmer and more pleasant. But getting that game late in the year, that's definitely an advantage for Oregon State, definitely a disadvantage for Arizona State. Arizona State's fortunate in one respect, Mark, that it has to go to Washington in mid-November, same kind of nasty Pacific Northwest November weather, but Washington's horrible this year. So Arizona State catches a break there. That was supposed to be a loss, before the season when the schedule originally came out. We all circled that and said, Arizona State's going to lose up there in Seattle. Probably not at this point, but Corvallis and that Oregon State game, still probably a game Arizona State's likely to lose. And if Arizona State does lose that game, Utah probably wins a tiebreaker, even if it loses to Oregon. You get into all that tiebreaker math, Utah would still have the head-to-head over Arizona State. And if Utah can at least have that win over UCLA this upcoming weekend, well, the Utes would have both head-to-head tiebreakers. So if it gets into a really cluttered, messy situation in the South, Utah still is the slightly more likely South champion at this point, going up against Oregon or Oregon State.
We are 1 week away from the initial college football playoff rankings being released on a Tuesday night, November 2nd. Matt and I record on a Tuesday. Don't know if it's going to be released in time, but so we're 1 week away. I'm just curious about your thoughts about Oregon and how the committee's going to treat Oregon, how they should treat Oregon. Again, the narrative being they beat Ohio State, maybe the best win in the country, certainly the best non-conference win in the country, but otherwise scraping by everyone, the loss to Stanford, but beating everyone else, but not necessarily impressively.
Well, Oregon should be higher than Ohio State, but we know how this works, Mark. We see this so many times. We saw it, when Ohio State actually got left out in 2017, and Alabama, despite not winning even its own division, Auburn won the SEC West, Georgia won the SEC, but Alabama got in over Ohio State because Alabama is the bigger name, and it comes down to the helmet, and it also comes down to reputation. Ohio State has a good reputation, but Alabama has an even better reputation. And part of that 2017 playoff decision, and I'll die on this hill, is that Ohio State got crushed by Clemson, 31-0, I believe, in the Fiesta Bowl playoff semifinals in 2016. whereas Alabama, lost a classic game to Clemson. So the committee, influenced by ESPN, let's not pretend that influence isn't there. Alabama made for better television. That's why Alabama got in, not because it had the better resume, because it made for better television. And so if you compare Oregon against Ohio State, despite the head-to-head win, who do you think the committee's going to choose? It's not a close call. And we knew that Notre Dame was going to get in. Like, the Texas A&M fans thought they had a case. It was always going to be Notre Dame. There was never a shred of doubt about that. So Oregon should get in, but Oregon's not getting in if Ohio State continues to be impressive and runs the table and finishes 12-1. We know how this movie ends, Mark, right?
We've seen it a few times, and I could give you a few more examples, but you already know them. And folks, if you go year to year, you can see them. Yes, certainly. There was an Ohio State-Penn State situation in 2016, and on and on.